Hey guys, I am Sheena Ladwa and this is
Joshua Alamu, what's
and
going
we're
on?
from
Ultimate Artist.
yeah. God, we're getting really deep in these videos, aren't we? But
Say it again.
not allowing your past to paralyze the potential of today. So, for example,
That's amazing.
if I break it down and I say let's take an example like you went into your vocal session with Josh and you booked Josh because you'd heard that he'd worked with all these amazing artists, Little Mix, Rita Ora, James Arthur, the list goes on, and you were like, I need to go and work with someone like that. You go into the lesson and he starts to do some basic work with you. He's just trying to get a gauge of where you're at, and he starts to hit certain notes that you just can't reach. And you stand there thinking, oh my God, I feel so stupid in front of this guy who's worked with all these amazing people. I can't do it. And then you go away and you don't book him again. What I mean is, don't let your past paralyze your potential today. The fact of the matter is, if you've not been able to do something in that environment with Josh, it just means that you haven't been worked into being able to do it. There's a process that you need to go through. The potential is there, but your past is paralyzing you, therefore you'll never know your true potential until you start to go through the process.
So what kind of things paralyze us as artists from progress?
Gosh. I think our mindsets paralyze us.
Right.
Our relationship.
Would you say that's the biggest thing, or it's just one of many things?
I think it's probably one of many things. I think the voices, first and foremost, I think the voices in our heads, they get us to a point where we become our own obstacles.
Right.
So we'll keep telling ourselves something, and remember guys that your feelings are not facts. How you're feeling in a moment is not fact and is not true to what the actual situation is. If you, and I'll put this in the context of music to make it more relatable, but because you're feeling a bit silly about, not being able to hit a certain note, it doesn't mean that the fact is you can't hit the note. You just need to work towards being able to do it. The fact is, you haven't done the work yet, therefore you are unable to deliver. But once you do the work, you will be able to start delivering. But what we get lost in is the feelings. I feel crap, therefore I'm crap.
Right.
That makes sense?
Totally makes sense, yeah.
So I think that the voices in our heads are the biggest obstacles. We talked about comparison in another video.
Good.
I think that we have this ability to really, really demean ourselves by the way we compare ourselves to other people.
Okay.
And we don't give ourselves enough credit for the things that we are able to do or the journey that we have done.
Yeah.
So for me, a lot of it does start with self. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, thinking about it, I would agree with that. I think, what about placing expectations on oneself? Could that be something that causes paralysis? Is it wrong to expect much of yourself?
No, I don't think it is. I think it's what else becomes attached to the expectations.
Right.
So if you're saying, I really want to be a songwriter, and so advised me that I should be writing at least 2 songs a month.
Okay.
Right?
Okay.
Your expectation is that I'm going to write 2 songs a month.
Okay.
But then you don't hit it.
Okay.
Are you a failure?
No.
If you wrote 1 song, does that make you a failure because you didn't hit the 2-song mark?
No.
You still hit 1 song. You still wrote a song, right?
What if you wrote half a song?
Is that still not progress?
Yeah, what if you didn't write at all?
Well, what are your reasons for not writing?
Well, yeah.
I think you need to look at it. If you can look at it and say, you know what, I didn't write anything because I don't believe I'm good enough.
So
or there was a fear.
So have I failed then?
No. I don't believe that you have failed.
What is that then? What can you call that then?
I think it's a lack of self-belief, and that's different to failure. If you don't pick up pen to paper because you don't quite believe in your talent and there's a fear stopping you, fear is not failure, they're 2 separate things.
Okay.
So then if I was working with an artist and that was what they came to me with, I would say, okay, so if you fear picking up the pen and putting it to paper because you don't believe in yourself, have you thought about maybe collaborating with another writer? Can I put you in touch with someone who might be able to help you and draw out your talent?
So then what is failure then?
I don't think failure really exists. I think it's an interpretation.
I'd like to know what you think. I think it does.
I think it exists, but I think it's an interpretation. And I think that we don't question things enough, and therefore we come to this conclusion that we failed. But actually, if you go to the source of what is deemed as failure, usually it's a lack of self-belief, or it's a lack of resources, or it's a lack of something, or it's an excess of fear.
Okay.
Right?
Okay.
There's too much fear that also paralyzes you. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I want to just look at what failure is. Oh, lack of success.
I don't agree with that, if I'm being honest.
The neglect or omission of expected or required action. The neglect or omission of expected action or required action.
I think it's relative. I think it's relative to the situation that you're in.
The action is a third definition. The action or state of not functioning. Is that failure? A sudden cessation of power. The collapse of a business.
I don't know if these are definitions as opposed to reasons for failure.
Then what is failure?
And that's what I'm saying to you.
Are you saying then failure is based on an interpretation of what it means to you?
I'd say so.
So for different people, failure is going to mean different things?
Yes.
Okay.
Definitely so.
So see, I can understand it in the context of I studied really hard for something, but I failed my exam. So I studied really hard. I didn't get 100%. I didn't even get 50%. I didn't even get 20%. I got 2%. That's a fail.
Okay, yes it is, but then I would ask you that is the success not in the actual application, so the studying for it? Like if you'd have done no study and failed, then that's ultimate failure, but if you've tried at something and you haven't, is that still failure?
Genuinely tried.
Yeah, genuinely, like you studied, but you didn't get the grades, or you didn't pass the exam. Does that mean that you're a failure?
If it's genuine study, and they've really done the work and you've still failed, then there's a problem somewhere else in the system. Something along the way just wasn't right, and so I wouldn't say that the failure is that person's fault, but more about the system that was, system has failed them in a way. Is failure in the context of an exam and failure in the context of music, what does that mean then?
I think it's different.
Is failure putting a song out and it not getting charted? Is failure not making a certain amount of money? Is failure what is that? What does that even mean in this context? I think it's individual, isn't it? It's individual. So say for you, so let's take you as a vocal coach with an artist or a singer in front of you. See, okay, I would feel like I have failed if a person comes in and for whatever reason I've wrecked their voice. Which I've learnt from in the past, to be fair, in my early days. I would but now, 20 years on, if that happened, I would feel like I failed them. That would eat at me, and that would make me want to fix that and get better from that and understand why that happened so that it never happens again.
But then that's a healthy relationship with failure, isn't it?
Okay. So
it's not paralyzed you.
No.
Because there's potential there, and that's what we were talking about. Don't let your past paralyze the potential of today.
Sure.
So there's potential there because you are a teacher, you've been doing it for so long.
Yeah.
But there's this situation that's arisen, and it can go one of two ways. Either it can completely paralyze you, or as you just said, it can make you want to do and be better, right?
So then maybe is failure the actuality of being totally paralyzed that you don't even act anymore? You give up.
Isn't there like a famous quote that says failure is not in doing, it's in the not doing? the inactiveness of it.
Yeah, so falling down, but deciding that you're just
You're
going to
gonna
stay
down.
there
Yeah.
and never getting up again.
I think it's really interesting. Like, guys, there's no kind of right or wrong
No,
answer. I
it's
think this is
interesting.
very relative to the individual. You know, failure is, I hate that word, to be honest, because of all the negative connotations attached to it. But, you know, I said about taking you as a vocal coach with a singer in front of you, and you give them, say you give them a pentatonic scale and they can't hit it, or they can't get the notes the first time, they might stand there feeling a bit stupid and feeling like they failed, but to you, they're not a failure, right? They've just got to work a bit. It's just they've got to train their ear a bit more.
Sure.
So I think failure and that sense of failing is relative. It's very individual as well.
Maybe it's something that's just been forced on everybody, a concept of it that's just been thrown at people over and over again, and they think that's it. But actually, could it be like failures like mistakes? Mistakes are genuinely the stepping stone to success. They really are.
Yeah.
And if you're going to be a fool and not want to make mistakes, you are what I would consider a fool, because you need to make mistakes. If you speak to any great artist or any great composer or whoever who's a person on that great level where you know they've put in their work over years and they're accomplished, ask them if they've never made a mistake on their way to being that great. It's just not possible. It's just not possible. You absolutely have to screw up and make mistakes to become that successful, that accomplished, or to become that great. You need to. It's part of the process of becoming great. Exactly.
Yeah.
So that's how mistakes should be looked at. Would you say maybe society has just thrown this concept of failure at people for so long in such a negative way that it's actually not being looked at it from the right perspective?
I don't know if you can say right perspective. I just think
Or
that
another
it's being seen from one perspective so much that people kind of feel like that's the only perspective, but actually there are different dimensions to almost every situation in life. And this is what I was saying earlier about, you know, we get tunnel vision, but if we just open up slightly, there's so much more to the sides. So for me, failure, yes, it's part societal. It can be culture. You know, I come from a culture where education is key, academia is key. You don't have anything such as divorce. Like, it's really, really harsh. And then if any of those things do happen, you get this sense of being a failure. So I think there are many variables as to what contribute to that sense of failure. But when it comes to being an artist, I think, and we probably have to bring it back to that, I think, well, there are two things I'm going to say. Success is down to personal interpretation. You know, success could be for one person having a major record deal and selling out stadiums, whereas for somebody else, it would just be seeing their song released in Spotify. Success is different for everybody, and I think you need to, before you start to take other people's views of success that they're projecting onto you, you need to really sit with yourself and have the conversation of, what does success mean to me? You know, it's common knowledge now, I quit music in 2015 because I knew that my truth was that I didn't want to be on stage in front of people. That wasn't where success was for me. So when I say quit music, I mean pursuing being an artist.
Got you.
Success means something very different to me. Success is actually in helping other people to achieve their dreams, learning from my mistakes and my failures in order to help them avoid doing and making the same mistakes. So I think success is a very individual thing.
Would you say then, in the same light, failure is a very individual thing?
100%.
Okay.
100%.
Okay.
And also remember, I think that, you know what, we get caught up in this thing of we want it here and now. And if we're not having it now, we fail.
Right.
But how do you know that what you're going through right now is not preparing you for the ultimate sense of success? Just because it's not happening on your timing, it doesn't mean it's not going to happen.
That's interesting.
You know, and I think we get so caught up in the here and now.
Oh, I can identify with that. You know, back when I was training, early days of being a vocal coach, you know, just having the experiences I've had up to this time, I can safely say that without some of those things that I didn't get called for, I didn't get, I've had the experiences that have brought me to a different place, that have prepared me for another situation that I was then apparently ready for.
Yeah.
But had I gotten certain things without certain learnings or experiences, I think I would have probably done a really bad job as well, because actually in my job you're extremely responsible for a person's voice, which it's something that everybody, not just the singer, their families, their corporate workplace, companies are dependent on this thing working, and the whole company, you know, making business work for everyone. So that's a huge responsibility from a vocal coach's perspective, because you need to make sure that you're doing everything within your power and capability to do to make sure that that person's voice is right. It's huge responsibility. It's nothing to joke about.
I think also from every mistake made, and I'm such a big advocate of making mistakes. The UA's strapline is all around making mistakes, and having the freedom to fail, because when you do fall, as long as you are getting yourself up again, you're coming back stronger. I had moments, when I was on stage where I would forget my own verse of a song. I'd be so anxious about the performance that my brain would go and I'd forget, but you'd have to keep going and you would just have to get through it. I've had incidents where, it's 1:00 in the morning and I've got a show the next day and the drummer cancels. All these things that can have you feeling really defeated actually end up strengthening you. And when you look back, a lot of it makes sense as to how you arrive at being the person that you've become. It's all of those things combined that make you this person today. So I would never discount or discredit anything, even if you deem it as a failure. I came off stage feeling like an absolute failure, but what it made me do was work 20 times harder so that didn't happen again. So I think, again, I'll say it, we said it earlier, your relationship with feelings like disappointment and failure and a lack of success, I think it's okay to feel all of those things, but your relationship with those feelings should be that of a healthy one. And I think what happens is, in life, a lot of people are imbalanced, so they go from one end to the other and there's just no happy medium. I think if you can look at your situations and find a happy medium, one of the things that really helps me is to counsel, so to speak with people close to me about things that are really weighing down.
That's beautiful,
and to get different perspectives on them, because we get so inside our own heads that we start to become tunnel vision, and then you speak to someone and they throw some light on it and you're like, wow, it's not as bad as I thought it was. Maybe I just needed to adjust my thinking, or maybe I could do that next time. But whatever's going to work for you, find your way and start to implement it in your lives. Otherwise, what you'll find is that your journey will be like a tug of war. It'll be a bit of give and then a massive pull back, and you'll feel like you're just being pushed and pulled. And what you actually want to do is find a space of happy medium and balance. And I think, if we could all get there. And where that will serve you so well is when you do start to experience the huge successes, the highs of being on stage in front of 100,000 people, because you've practiced having that happy medium. You will always be able to recenter, and at least that's my hope, that you will always be able to recenter and have perspective. Because when we don't have perspective, that's like a horrible, dangerous territory. And especially as an artist, when you're going to have teams of people around you, different energies, different points of view, different opinions, and all of that's being projected onto you, you've got to be able to really kind of filter through all the noise and come to your own peace and your own happy medium, your own conclusions. Otherwise, you're going to be taken on everybody else's emotional roller coaster, and you are going to feel so worn out and tired as a result of that you won't even enjoy the thing that you once loved doing, that got you out of bed in the morning, which is music, right?
Definitely. So I would say that then failure is something that has to be reframed and understood to the individual, and interpreted and defined for the individual, and almost educated upon, because, you know, for instance, the young people can see failure as an absolute sort of like finality, like it's that fatal. But I think we need to make sure that the education that we give out, or what's received regarding failure, is it's not this final thing, that it's actually it's more sort of like, it's infinite, it's not so finite, there's many layers to it, and it's also sort of like a process thing, you know, it's actually part of the journey, and not necessarily like a destination in itself. Oh, now you've hit failure, you're now at failure, you're done, you know, death.
I would go as far as saying that, you know, when we think about things like school, like GCSEs, A-levels, like degrees, there's that real strong sense of failure and passing and succeeding.
Right? Exactly.
I think the ultimate thing in life,
that's where it comes from.
It is the education side, because it's ingrained in us from a young age, like exams and passing and failing. But actually, I think that the most important thing is to really understand life as a whole. See, when you're going through school and college and, you know, university, you're being prepared for areas. So like, you know, if you study law, that's what you're being prepared for, or medicine. But life is so much bigger, that everything we're talking about, like your character, your resilience, your relationships with how you deal with conflict and anger, and all of these things, they're actually what are going to help you in life, throughout your life.
Failure is not the destination, Peeps.
No, it's not.
It's definitely part of the journey, man. And that's really good to understand and define that, I think, in a healthy way. Like you said, it's not about a right way or wrong. It's about being healthy or unhealthy with it. And I think that's definitely a healthy way to look at what failure really is in this context of developing artistry and being an artist. It's actually just part of the journey. It's something that we learn from. It's not the destination. Peace.